Hey guys, just wanted to shout out before we dive into today's video that it is the last day to get entered to win the free training weekend from Ride Adventures. If you want to get yourself entered to win, you get to choose your weekend, you get to choose your difficulty. All you have to do is click the link down in the description below. You have until midnight tonight to get entered to win, so get clicking.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Have you ever wondered how I make the videos that I make, or what equipment that I use, or maybe you're trying to get yourself started on making your own videos? Well, today I'm going to show you all of the tools, the tips, and the tricks that I use to make the videos that I do. And all of this is actually sparked by a video that her two wheels, Jess, made a little while ago showing her setup. And I actually commented in there because this stuff really fascinates me. How everybody's setup is just a little bit different, and everybody finds the stuff that works really well for them. So today I wanted to show you what goes into making a video here on Spite's Corner, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. Now, a couple of things before we dive into this video proper. First and foremost, I wanted to point out that this video is sponsored by Insta360, and I do have one of their cameras in my kit. They have actually sent that to me, and this is a sponsored video. However, all the thoughts and opinions about the camera and the reasons why I'm using it, they are mine. Now, second thing, you're gonna see some tech in this video that is beyond extra. Like, we're talking so far above and beyond what I need that it was a little bit silly that I bought it, frankly. So if you see something in this video and you're like, well, this is too expensive, I don't wanna buy it, then don't. You probably won't need it. So don't think that you need to buy everything that I talk about. However, all the links are gonna be down in the description below. Last thing, this video is gonna be structured. It's gonna be kind of long, and some parts are gonna be more detailed than others. I'm gonna break it down into the on the side of the road stuff here. I'm gonna talk about the stuff in my bag. I'm gonna talk about some tips for how I film on the road and some tips for how I edit and the tools that I use. All of that is going to be broken down in the chapters down below. If you want to just skip around in this video, go for it. Don't feel like you need to watch the whole thing unless you're just morbidly curious how I do all of the stuff that I do. So with that being said, let's dump out my camera bag and show you what all is in there and what it does. Okay, folks, I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can because there's a lot to talk about here. First and foremost, I actually wanted to talk about my helmet. This is one of the key things that I use when I'm on the road, and it's the reason why my audio sounds the way it does. It's really nice and quiet. A quiet helmet will transform your audio. I actually talked about it in my helmet review. That's in the cards if you want to check it out. Next thing is the Lumix, the camera that is currently filming on. This camera is overkill. You do not need this camera. Your cell phone will do it, a GoPro will do it, any old DSLR can handle this job. You don't need something like this GH6 here. It helps me do some cool stuff. It allows me to film in slow motion. It allows me to do really, really fun things. And that's what I approach videos as, is how can I have fun making them? This allows me to do that. You don't need a camera like this. However, if you want to know my settings, it is 30 frames per second, 60 or 120 frames with the matching shutter speed. My ISO is always on auto, and then I control my exposure with f-stop. Attached to the camera and on my hip here is a Rode Wireless Go 2. This is how I record my audio when I'm on the side of the road. This allows me to be completely untethered from the camera. It says it's got like a 300-ish foot range. It really doesn't. This is about as far as I would normally get. I think the camera's like 30 feet from me, maybe. It's got a receiver on the top of the camera that is currently accepting audio. That receiver allows me to reduce the volume that you're hearing from me so that I don't blow out the camera, and you can pair a second one of these guys if you need to. I actually am going to pick one of these up because Whitney is showing up on the channel, and I don't want to be syncing audio anymore. It's a giant pain in the butt. However, you don't need that. You can get away with a Tascam. This is an independent audio recorder. You don't even need one this fancy, and you can use your phone if you wanted to. You would need to clap sync this thing, which is just doing that. When you start, you get that nice loud ping, and you see it in the waveform that allows you to sync the various audio tracks. The reason why one of these is handy is because it allows you to record while you're on the bike, while you're on the side of the road, doing whatever you want to do. But again, your phone can do the same thing. You just need to download a voice recording app for it. And One that has a gain adjustment is super, super handy. I'm not gonna dive into exactly what all that means. There are better people online to explain that, but suffice it to say, turn the gain down a lot and you get a much clearer signal. Moving on, we have my main camera. This is a GoPro Hero 10. Again, you don't need a fancy top of the line GoPro. In fact, I think the 11 is out now, so this is no longer fancy and top of the line. I have two of these in my bag. This is something where I used to have this on my handlebars, looking back at me, and then this was on my chin, looking forward. I use a media mod on my chin GoPro because it allows me to record audio directly into the camera using this mic and this cable, which is currently covered with athletic tape. This acts as a basically gain knob, and it just turns down the volume from an Amazon thing. I think this together was like $10 on Amazon, and they are latchkey to my setup. I actually have a ton of these sitting in drawers at home. But again, you don't need to get all of this. You can use your phone as an audio recorder and then just use the GoPro to record video. You will just need to clap sync. On the GoPro, you will see an ND filter. These are Polar Pros that allow me to change the shutter speed on this, and that allows me to have the motion blur. You don't need this. You can just record at 30 or 24 frames per second with the auto shutter speed, and your footage will look great. If you want to know my settings for this, I actually film at 1080p on the GoPro. I film at 24 frames per second with Super View on, and I adjust my shutter speed to 1/48, which allows me to have, again, that motion blur, using this to control for my exposure. Last piece of kit is the Insta360. I mentioned this a little bit earlier on. This video is sponsored by Insta360, but I have been using this camera for about 2 weeks now, and I'm really, really impressed with this thing. Not only the quality of the image that I get out of it, but how easy it is to use and how easy it is to edit. So if you were wondering how I'm getting those kind of cool external to the bike shots where it feels like somebody's following behind me, or I've got a drone following above me, it's actually this. It's really a nice, neat, handy package that produces some very impressive footage. In a former life, I actually used to do 360-degree virtual tours. So I used a lot of different 360-degree options. This is by far one of the easiest to use. The biggest thing for me was the workflow, making sure that this wasn't going to increase editing time. The footage is so easy to work with that it's frankly surprising. If you're at all nervous about trying to edit or export footage from it, it's crazy simple and can be done with the click of a few buttons. If you wanted to get yourself a camera like this, links are in the description below, as well as links to all of the rest of the products that I talked about. Now, with that out of the way, I actually want to show off some of my setup before we hit the road, just so that you can see what it might look like. Now, as far as setups for shots go, the biggest thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to make this system easy for any single person to use, and I've been using this setup for years. So a lot of times I'll have to set the camera down, walk in and out of shot a couple of times to make sure that you're not cutting off the top of my head or whatever. And then I can actually start talking. I'll also do some audio checks, which I'm probably rolling humorous footage of right now, making sure sound works, blah, 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 blah. I will also have my shots ruined by cars going through, and that's why we'll always try to find the quietest place to film, because you don't want to hear a bunch of extra noise, and it also does blow up some of the takes. Again, some humorous footage. Joys of filming on a public road. For the helmet, I have my GoPro here. I will always check the angle before I even put my helmet on. I'll hold my helmet out to make sure that it's looking as straight ahead as I can and that my GoPro is looking as straight ahead. I don't want it looking up at the sky. I don't want it looking down at the tank. I want it looking forward out over the handlebars. So I always double check this. And if your helmet is fitted with a Cardo or any other comm system, take a second and move your mic for your GoPro to the other side of your helmet. Why? Because if it's over here, you might get some radio interference, and that manifests as like a clicking sound. Last thing, for the road, if you have an independent camera, just find a cool spot for it. You can put a GoPro on the handlebars, you can put it down here, you can use the Insta360 like back here to get some cool tail shots, or out here like I have it on the Harley. Just play around with your external shot. Do something different that varies it up a little bit so that you're not staring at the same thing for a really long time. That helps keep audience members engaged, and it helps you enjoy making the videos more. And that's another thing that I'm gonna repeat. If you're not having fun making the video, it's not gonna be fun to watch. So make sure that you're doing at least something creative and having a good time doing it. Now, let's hit the road and see what this is like in motion.
So now that we're out here on the road, this is actually how the setup looks. You can see down here that that is where my Insta360 is. If I'm using a GoPro, it sits right here on my handlebar, pointing back at me. But the bread and butter is this guy right here, the GoPro that's on my chin. You've seen it in a bunch of different videos. This setup has some flaws, I'm not gonna lie, but it is also the most streamlined setup I could come up with. And you may notice that down in the lower right hand corner, if you're on YouTube, you are seeing 4K. Why is this video in 4K if I'm filming at 1080p? Well, there's a little trick in editing that I'm gonna show you guys here in a second. Now, a couple of tips and tricks that I can give you here that might help you feel a little bit more happy with your videos right out of the gate. Do yourself a favor and actually just like scream, just yell before you turn the cameras on. Why? Because it helps you get your energy up. And when you're first starting out, you have a tendency to talk like this because this might be what your conversational volume is, but you know, this conversational volume, it doesn't really translate to very passionate, so you have to amp up your voice a little bit. One of the things you might notice if you've actually met me is this isn't what I talk like. I'm not this animated. It's not because I'm putting on a character. It's just because I need to project my voice, and that really helps if you yell to just get you in that mode of projecting your voice and talking with your diaphragm. It sounds silly, but it really does change the way that you sound on camera, and it makes you sound more energetic and more passionate, and that really comes across. Now, another thing that I will note here is you have seen this road in vlogs a whole bunch. This is City Park Road, I think, or one of the roads off of it. The reason why I come to the same haunts is because these are roads that I can ride without thinking about it, because believe it or not, it actually takes a lot of effort to talk like this. To keep my thoughts in order, it takes a lot of effort to ride a motorcycle and do that at the same time. So it really helps to be on familiar roads where I'm not going to say you can tune out, because you never want to tune out while you're riding a motorcycle, but that you can ride more easily. So route selection is actually super helpful. And it's why when I do my day in the saddles, I actually have some very defined routes that I go on based on what kind of bike I'm riding. As you can hear now, I have my face shield open, and now my face shield is closed. When you're talking to the camera, close your face shield. It's going to increase the low end of your voice, especially if you're somebody who, you know, maybe you're a woman or your voice isn't as deep as mine. It really helps to preserve the low end of your voice, because the high end cuts through the wind, but the low end is what really gives you your volume. So you're gonna have to like increase the gain in post if you're all high end, and you don't really want to mess around with EQing, so just simply close your visor. Last thing I'm going to mention here, don't be too concerned about, like, every one of my videos has a script. Don't be too concerned about hitting every single one of your lines. Just get as close as you can, get your point across, and if you have to say it over and over again to get it right, that's totally fine. There are a lot of times where on a vlog I will just stop talking, I will sit quietly on the motorcycle, I'll assemble my thoughts, and then I'll just keep going, because that really helps me recenter and keep things focused. It's part of the reason why I cut the first rides into their own video for the day in the saddles, because those were too unfocused for me to do them concisely. Like, see, for example, right there, I actually just paused as I was going through these corners and trying to assemble my next piece of rationale. And with that, guys, that's actually how I film the vlogs. Now, if that's all you care about, feel free to tap out here, but I am actually going to take you guys behind the scenes into my editing room, so you guys can see what some of my projects look like and see some of the tools that I use in the back end, because I know some folks out there have, you know, their preferred editing suite, as I do with Adobe, but some folks are just getting started and they want to see what actual video editing looks like. So if you're interested for that part, stay tuned, and if you're not, see you guys in the next one. But let's head back home, ingest all this footage, and start editing.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude with my single one ring light that's giving me kind of weird, like, glowy shadows that look a little distracting behind me on the monitor. I'm hoping that it's not too distracting. Anyways, behind me you see the next stage of my X3 setup, and that is my 2-monitor editing bay. This thing is actually a 49-inch curved monitor, and then this I just use to manage files and surf the web and be on Discord while I'm editing. And then over here, this gigantic black monolith is a incredibly overbuilt computer. This thing's got a 3090 in it. It's got a 1500 watt, I think, power supply. It's a big, beefy boy. You don't need a PC like that, but it really does help to have that kind of graphical hardware when you're editing in Premiere, because Premiere loves to eat computer resources. And now, speaking of editing, let's get into Premiere, and I'll show you a little bit about how I manage files and how I actually edit and timeline all of this stuff. All right, folks, we are now recording on a webcam, and OBS is over here, and I've got Premiere here and some stuff. This is the first time I've actually set this up, so we're gonna see how this goes. But I wanted to show you guys first and foremost how I manage my files, because this is one of the things that makes a huge difference later on. Take a look at just how I have this laid out. I've got all my pieces of camera in one folder. I've got my bad takes in another. I've got my vlogs in another. I've got B-roll. This just allows me to be very streamlined when it comes to editing, especially if you work with editors, professional editors. Giving them these kind of folders that are super easy to search makes their lives so much easier. If you're just editing solo, this will, I promise you, it will make your life easier. Now, this right here is Premiere Pro. Nobody who uses Premiere Pro has a fun time doing it. I guarantee you. It's terrible, but it gets the job done. So, what you're looking at here is the timeline of all of my footage. This is actually the very video that you're watching right now. I'm editing it here. I've got my stuff for my pieces to camera separated into different chunks. You know, this is the intro here. This is me going over all my stuff. This just allows me to be very quick about moving stuff together. Obviously, I'm gonna get rid of all of that stuff later, smush it all together, and use transitions to cover it. But this is just how I start editing stuff. My sequence is 1080p. I never edit in 4K. All of my footage is in 1080p with the exception of my stuff off the camera. Why? YouTube will just absolutely compress the heck out of whatever you give it. So if you give it a 1080p file, it ends up looking more like 720. If you give them a 4K file, it feels a lot more like 2.7. If you give them 2.7, it feels like 1080p. However, there's a trick. If you're filming at 1080p, then you're not going to be creating massive files that take forever for you to ingest and forever for you to bring it into Premiere and all of that stuff. But you will export if you go to the export settings at YouTube 4K. So I've got it selected here, 2160p. That's YouTube 4K. This is going to up-res all of my footage from 1080p to 4K. And then YouTube is going to compress it back down, and that's going to preserve my image quality without creating a bunch of extra work. It's going to take a lot less time to render. It's going to take a lot less time to upload. This will get you very close to 4K quality on YouTube without having to deal with all of the BS that comes with actually filming and editing in 4K. Now, looking at my timeline here, the next question you're going to ask is, okay, Spite, you're using 1080p footage, you're exporting at 4K, but it's not really 1080. Why do you film in 4K with your camera? That allows me to actually scale down the footage, and this is actually what it would normally look like, right? Just super zoomed in. But let's say right here, I've made a mistake. So there's a cut right here, right? Moving on. So you can see there's a jump cut right there. But I can hide that jump cut if I tighten this up a little bit. Move this. Moving on. So nice and tight. And then I will zoom this in to 75%. I'll move me over and up. And then mirror signal. Moving on, we have my... It looks like I'm intended to do that. This is a great way to hide stuff. It's jump cutting. People who know what to look for know exactly what this is, but it's very subtle. If you're watching this far in the video, you will see me do this all the time. It's how I cover my flubs. I'm doing it in this video. I'm doing it in all of my videos. Unfortunately, you can't cover everything with B-roll. One thing I did want to talk about here in the sequence is the hard limiter. So you'll notice that my vlog audio is just this giant brick in the waveform. That's all. This is the waveform audio versus the waveform from me just talking. So what I need to do is I need to balance the audio so that my vlog audio isn't outrageously louder than my stuff to camera. So what I use is a hard limiter to bring the audio up for my pieces to camera. And it's really simple. All you do is you just find the hard limiter, you drag it onto your clip, and then you edit it while you're listening to it. I always use a true peak because I don't want to get anywhere close to clipping. Technically at a -0.1 you will never clip, but that is way too close for comfort. Any extra sound will push you over that threshold, and then you get that nasty distortion. So I always aim for -1 dB. To give you an idea of what it sounds like when I don't have the limiter on, I'm actually going to bypass the limiter here so you can hear it. It's going to be structured. It's going to be kind of long, and some parts are... So you could hear pretty quiet. Now let's re-enable it. They're going to be more detailed than others. I'm going to break it down into the on the side of the road stuff here. I'm going to talk about the stuff in my bag. I'm going to talk about some... It's pretty subtle, but it makes a big difference. It causes you to not have to turn your volume up on your phone or on your speakers, whatever you're listening to. Just makes things a lot more pleasant for you, the listener. So I will always do an audio balancing pass at the end. When I'm done editing, I go through, balance everything out, make sure it sounds good. Last thing I want to mention here is something that really gets on my nerves when I'm watching vlogs, and it's really easy to fix, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So listen to this really quick.
Here in a second. Now.
Did you hear that click? Play it one more time.
Now.
It's really subtle. But now that I've pointed it out, you will hear it in future videos, and that click drives me nuts. What's happening there is there's too much difference between the audio. and Premiere just can't make it sound good. So what you need to do is you need to put a transition over it. It's really simple. You just do a constant power crossfade, and it's just an audio band-aid. And then if I go back,
For you guys here in a second. Now, a
Gone.
couple of
it's just that simple. That's one thing you can do to help professionalize your stuff a little bit. Now, once I'm done with all of the footage here, I'm going to export it, upload it to YouTube, and then you'll see it. But before we end this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the hardest parts when you're just getting started. The last thing, guys, that I wanted to talk about in this video is the eternal struggle of getting noticed on YouTube. You might start out thinking that you've got this great idea and that your video is like basically perfect, and you put it out there and nobody clicks on it, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. And unfortunately, I don't have a ton of really great advice. I got very lucky when I started my channel that I had an inbuilt base of fans that wanted to follow me to my own stuff. And I got lucky that I was able to put out a shout out on a much bigger channel. So I wish I had better advice here. The only thing I can say is try tweaking your titles and thumbnails, and do what you can to broadcast yourself in other communities. I know for a fact that on his server, Shade Tree Surgeon has a channel that is designed specifically to help get you noticed and help you answer some questions about anything that you have in terms of making videos and getting started on YouTube. And I have a channel like that in my Discord as well. Another great thing to check out is Reddit. Find yourself a community on Reddit that you can post to, or have somebody post up one of your videos if there's a rule against self-promotion. You can't simply rely on the YouTube algorithm to come to your aid. Sometimes you have to be a little bit proactive. But again, guys, I got very lucky when I got started. And again, that's all thanks to you guys. So huge shout out there, but I wish I had more to say on getting noticed. Do it, have fun, and the rest will come with time. And with that, guys, that is how I make all of the videos on the YouTube channel. It is a very long process, and I actually spend more time making and thinking about and scripting videos and editing them than I actually do writing. That's a small portion of what actually happens on the channel, and hopefully this kind of helps show you what I actually do, because this is a cool part of what I do. It's actually one of my favorite parts, even though it can be a little bit tedious from time to time. If you have any questions about how any of this stuff works, drop it down in the description down below. A huge shout out to the team at Insta360 for supporting the channel and sending me their X3 camera if you want to get one of these for yourself. All the information is down in the description below. And last but not least, remember guys, today is the last day to get entered to win the free training expedition with Ride Adventures. All that information down in the description below. And with that, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to finish editing this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.